My wife lied about her debt while I paid every bill, so I transferred everything to my name and walked away without saying a word. I'm a 31-year-old guy, and I thought I married the most honest woman I'd ever met. Avor had this warmth that made everything feel simple. Her smile, her laugh, the way she made a small apartment feel like home. When we got married, I promised her she'd never have to worry about money again. And I meant it. I took on every bill, every rent payment, every grocery trip without hesitation. She said she just needed a little time to get her finances in order, and I believed her at first. It didn't feel like a burden. I actually like taking care of things. I'd come home after long shifts, find her waiting with dinner and a hug, and it made every hour worth it. She'd joke that I was the responsible one, and I'd laugh, thinking we were just balancing each other out. When she mentioned some leftover student loans, I didn't press. Everyone had something from their past, and if she trusted me enough to share that, it felt like proof we were starting on honesty. Still, I noticed little moments like when she'd tense up if a bill came in the mail or when her phone would buzz, and she'd turn it over quickly. I told myself she just valued privacy. Love, I thought, was about trust, not control. One night, as we were sitting on our old couch eating takeout, she leaned on my shoulder and said, "You're my rock, you know that?" I kissed the top of her head and told her, "We're a team, always." I went to bed that night feeling like I'd done something right, like I was building a life grounded in trust and partnership. I didn't know it yet, but that same trust would soon become the weapon that shattered everything I believed about love. Our first year together looked perfect from the outside. We took weekend trips, posted smiling photos, and had friends telling us we were couple goals. I was proud of that image of us. Every paycheck I earned went toward building something stable. I'd cover rent, groceries, car payments, and she'd promise, "Once I'm fully caught up on my debt, I'll start contributing more." I believed her. I always did. Avor had this way of saying things that made lies sound like love. She insisted we keep our finances separate, saying, "It's just better that way. We'll avoid money fights." I figured she was being practical. I didn't realize that separate really meant secret every so often. I'd catch glimpses of something of credit card offers with her name piling up by the door, strange late-night texts, or moments where she'd step outside mid-call and lower her voice. When I'd ask, she'd smile sweetly and say, "Just bank stuff, don't worry," and I didn't. Because in my mind, worry meant distrust, and I didn't want to be that kind of husband. One Saturday morning, I decided to do something special. I opened a joint savings account as a surprise, a way for us to start planning for a house. I remember placing the paperwork on the table, grinning like a kid. "It's in both our names," I told her. "We can start saving for our future together." Her reaction wasn't what I expected. Her smile froze for a second, just long enough for me to notice. "That's sweet," she said softly, forcing enthusiasm. Then she hugged me, tight, too tight, like she was hiding something behind that warmth. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just overwhelmed. But deep down, a small unease started to form. One I didn't yet have the courage to name. It started with little things, bills that didn't look familiar, strange account names on statements, and unexplained late fees. At first, I thought it was a mix-up, but every time I asked, Avor would go quiet. "You don't trust me anymore?" she'd say, eyes watering just enough to make me feel like the bad guy. Then she'd turn away, trembling, and I'd cave instantly. I hated seeing her upset, and somehow, I was always the one apologizing for asking questions about our finances. She started using words like stress and anxiety to shut down conversations. "I can't talk about money right now," she'd say. "It just makes me spiral." She made it sound like my concern was cruelty. So, I'd take her hand, kiss her forehead, and whisper, "Okay, we'll talk when you're ready." She never was. I began noticing changes in her habits. Packages arriving almost every other day. Designer bags, spa appointments, and a new phone, but her explanation was always rehearsed. It was on sale, or I had still credit. I wanted to believe her so badly that I convinced myself she was just treating herself after years of stress. One night, I woke up and found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her banking app, face pale in the glow of the screen. When she realized I was watching, she locked the phone instantly and said, "Go back to bed." Her tone was sharp, a side of her I'd never seen. I did as she asked, But that moment stayed with me. The next morning, she made me pancakes, kissed me goodbye, and acted like nothing had happened. And just like that, the cracks in our marriage began to seal themselves under layers of guilt and performance, cracks I was too blind to see as the warning signs they were. A few weeks later, I got a call at work that made my stomach drop. A woman from the bank asked if I could confirm a joint credit application, one I'd never filled out. I remember staring at my computer screen, the hum of the office fading as I muttered, "There must be a mistake." The rep read my name, address, and divorce information back to me like it was perfectly normal. My voice cracked when I said, "No, I didn't sign that." That evening, I confronted her. I walked into the apartment holding the letter the bank sent and asked, "Avor, what's this?" She looked up from her laptop, startled, and in a flash of fake confusion said, "Oh, that, probably identity theft or some clerical thing. You know how banks are." Her tone was light, almost rehearsed. Still, I wanted to believe her. She even smiled, reaching for my hand. "Don't worry, babe. I'll sort it out tomorrow." Her fingers were soft, but I could feel the tension beneath them, like she was holding back panic. I nodded, pretending to let it go, but something had shifted inside me. That night, while she slept, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, pulling every statement, every bill, every transaction I could find. The deeper I went, the worse it looked. Late fees, cash advances, interest charges I'd never seen before, all under accounts tied to her name, and somehow connected to mine. By the time the sun came up, my chest felt hollow. The woman I trusted most was moving money behind my back, and I had no idea how deep it went. As I watched her sleep peacefully, I told myself I'd get proof before confronting her again, but a part of me already knew something was breaking, and there was no unseeing it now. The truth came out by accident. I was sorting the mail one evening when I found a thick envelope from a credit company I didn't recognize. My name was printed beside hers, so I opened it without thinking. Inside was a balance statement, nearly $47,000 in unpaid debt, spread across multiple cards. I froze. The numbers blurred. There were cash withdrawals, luxury purchases, and interest payments climbing like a mountain I didn't even know existed. At the bottom of one page was her signature, and beside it, mine. Except I never signed it. My handwriting copied perfectly. My chest tightened, my hands trembling as the air left the room. She had forged my name. My wife, the person I trusted most, had turned me into an accessory to her lies. I didn't confront her right away. I sat in silence that night, eating dinner with her as if nothing was wrong. She laughed about some TV show while my mind raced behind a calm mask. I started noticing details I'd ignored before: how she'd always pick up the mail first, how she'd suddenly change passwords, how she'd deflect whenever I brought up savings. Later, while she showered, I gathered every document I could: letters, statements, screenshots, even photos of her receipts. I stored them all in a hidden folder on my laptop. My heart was pounding, not just from anger, but fear. Fear of what else I didn't know. When she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, she smiled and said, "You're quiet tonight." I forced a smile back, replying, "Just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was wide awake for the first time in years. That night, I stared at the ceiling, realizing our entire marriage might have been built on a lie. And somehow, I knew this was only the beginning of what she'd been hiding. After that night, I couldn't look at her the same way. Every word she said felt rehearsed, every smile too polished. She still kissed me goodbye each morning, but her eyes no longer met mine. It was like living with a stranger who wore my wife's face. I started to quietly test her story's small details, casual questions. Every time, her answers changed. She began coming home late, claiming work meetings that stretched past midnight. One night, I called her office. Her boss sounded confused. "Avor's been taking unpaid leave this month," he said. My grip tightened on the phone. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there in silence as the realization sank in. She wasn't working. She was lying again this time. I didn't even know why. When she got home, I watched her drop her purse, yawn dramatically, and say, "Long day." I nodded, masking the storm inside me. "Yeah," I murmured. "You deserve a break." She smiled faintly, unaware that I had started moving my money out of our joint account earlier that day. Over the next few weeks, I began protecting myself: new bank accounts, locked passwords, consultations with a financial advisor. I didn't confront her, Not yet. She still thought she was in control, and I wanted it that way. I started playing her game, pretending to be oblivious, letting her dig deeper into her web of lies. One evening, while she was scrolling on her phone, I said softly, "You know, I trust you completely." She looked up, surprised, almost guilty, before forcing a smile. "Good," she said, her voice shaky. That was the moment I knew she could feel it, the ground shifting beneath her feet. But I didn't plan to warn her. I just sat there, memorizing the way she looked, under the glow of our living room light, a woman who didn't yet realize she was standing in the ruins of her own deceit. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of day that starts normal and ends with everything falling apart. I came home from work, loosened my tie, and froze the moment I saw two men standing at the door. "Mr. Lawson?" one of them asked, flashing a badge from a debt collection agency. My heart sank. "We hear about the outstanding balance on your joint accounts. You've been unresponsive to notices." I glanced at the thick folder in his hand, statements with my name on them, accounts I'd never opened. "There's been a mistake," I stammered, but the man's tone was calm, practiced. "Sir, your signatures on these documents when they left." I sat in the silence of the apartment, staring at the papers spread across the table. The walls felt closer. My hands shook. Then I heard the door unlock. A voice walked in, holding a smoothie, humming softly like nothing was wrong. I looked up at her and said quietly, "We need to talk." She froze. "About what?" I slid the papers across the table. Her face drained of color. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her voice rose defensive, trembling. "I did it for us. You wouldn't understand the pressure I was under." "For us," I repeated, my voice steady but cold. "You forged my name. You ruined my credit. You lied about everything." Her tears came fast, and with them, manipulation. "You were never here for me emotionally." I felt alone. That line, that single attempt to twist it, broke something in me. I stood up, walked past her, and said, "I know everything of all, every last detail." She tried to follow, but I closed the bedroom door behind me. On the other side, I heard her sobbing, the same hollow sound I'd once mistaken for love. But this time, I didn't feel pity, just the quiet certainty that something had finally snapped inside me, and there was no going back. The next morning, I woke up calm to calm, the kind of stillness that comes after a storm when you realize nothing's left to save. Avor avoided me, moving around the house like a ghost, whispering to herself and pretending things weren't falling apart. But I'd already made my choice. I wasn't going to yell, or cry, or beg for answers. I was going to act. I called a lawyer during my lunch break. He listened quietly as I explained everything: the forged documents, the fake accounts, the lies. His advice was simple: separate your finances immediately. Secure what's yours before she drags you down with her. So I did exactly that. I closed joint cards, transferred savings into a personal account, and started putting the house deed under my name. It was all legal. Every dollar had come from my paychecks. At home, I pretended to forgive her. I brought her coffee, cracked small jokes, acted as if we were healing. She relaxed, even smiled sometimes. That's what made it easier. I needed her calm, distracted, unaware of what I was doing behind the scenes. One night, as she scrolled through her phone on the couch, I asked it, "You ever think about starting fresh? Like moving somewhere quiet?" She looked up, eyes softening. "You do that with me," she whispered. I smiled and nodded. "Of course. I'd do anything for us." She believed me. That's how good she was at believing lies, even her own. Over the next week, I moved methodically, cleaning up every trace of shared responsibility, redirecting bills, locking down my accounts. Each click of a transfer felt like a quiet form of justice. By the time I was done, everything that once tied me to her name belonged to me alone. And the most satisfying part, she still thought I was staying when everything was finally secure. I started sleeping again. Real, deep sleep, the kind I hadn't felt in months. Avor thought it meant we were healing, that my silence was forgiveness. But in truth, it was the quiet before her world collapsed. Every account was now under my name. The debts, all traced back to hers. I'd moved my paycheck, my savings, even my investments. Every cent she once depended on had slipped through her fingers without her knowing. I waited for a sign, a final push to leave. It came one morning when she kissed me goodbye and said, "I'm going shopping using my card this time." Her smile looked proud, almost defiant. I smiled back, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. It just confirmed that I was done that afternoon. While she was out, I packed. Not in a frenzy, calmly, deliberately. A suitcase with clothes, my documents, my laptop, and a folded note. Nothing else. No dramatic goodbye, no confrontation. Just truth written in ink. I placed the note on the kitchen counter. You lied about everything, Avor. Every word, every debt, every promise. What's left is yours to fix, not mine. Then I left my keys on top of it. As I stepped outside, the air felt colder, sharper, like the world had been waiting for me to breathe again. I walked past the mailbox, the same one that once hid her secrets, and kept going. No glance back. By the time she got home, I was already on the road, my phone turned off, her number blocked. I imagined her walking in, calling my name, finding only silence and that letter. For years, I'd been the one holding everything together. Now, all I'd left her with was exactly what she'd given me: emptiness and truth. The first few weeks after I left were quiet, unnervingly so. No calls, no texts, no chaos. I started to think maybe she'd accepted it. But then the messages began. Friends, old co-workers, even her cousin, all reaching out with the same story. Avor says you stole everything. One even said she was threatening to go to the police, claiming I'd drained her accounts and vanished. At first, I ignored it. I'd already spoken to my lawyer, who assured me everything I'd done was legal. Every dollar I took was earned, documented, and backed by evidence. Still, the flood of rumors spread fast. On social media, she painted herself as the victim, the poor wife abandoned by her cold, manipulative husband. I watched from a distance as people offered sympathy, money, and advice to stay strong. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Then came the inevitable crash. Creditors started calling her, not me. Her accounts froze. Her car got repossessed. Even her parents stopped defending her after discovering she forged my signature. The mask she wore, the perfect, graceful wife, crumbled in public for everyone to see. I got one final message from a mutual friend. She saying you ruined her life. I remember staring at the screen, taking a deep breath, and typing back, no, she did that herself. By then, I had a new apartment, small, quiet, overlooking the city lights. My life felt lighter, simpler. I'd started therapy, picked up old hobbies, and slept through the night without checking my phone. For years, I thought justice had to be loud, explosive, but now I knew better. Real justice is paperwork, patience, and silence. And in that silence, Avor's entire illusion finally collapsed. Still, I knew it wasn't truly over, not yet. It had been 6 months since I walked away when her name appeared on my phone again, a new number. Same ache in my chest. For a second, I just stared at it, debating whether to open it. Curiosity 1. Her first line read, please, just hear me out. I should have deleted it right there. But I didn't. She said she changed, that she was in therapy now and wanted closure. She claimed the debts were under control, that she'd finally learned what mattered. It almost sounded convincing, the same gentle tone that used to pull me back in. Then she added, I think we could still fix things if you just give me one more chance. That line made me laugh out loud. Bitterly, against my better judgment, I agreed to one call, not out of love, but curiosity. Her voice was soft, trembling, the same weapon she'd always used. I know I hurt you, she said. But you have to understand, I was scared. Scared of what? I asked. Of losing the life we had, the life I paid for. I replied quietly. There was a long silence before she whispered, you don't have to be cruel. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. Avor, I'm not being cruel. I'm just done pretending. You didn't lose me because of debt, you lost me because you lied about everything. On the other end, I heard her crying, but for the first time, her tears didn't move me. They sounded hollow, like echoes from a story I no longer belonged to. When the call ended, I blocked her number again. I sat there for a while, staring out the window, feeling something strange, not anger, not sadness, just peace. For years, I'd been the man holding on to lies disguised as love. Now, I was the man finally letting them go. Still, one part of me couldn't shake the thought maybe this was her rock bottom. The moment she finally faced herself, time has a way of softening even the hardest memories. A year later, Avor's name no longer carried the sting it once did. I'd rebuilt my life, a quiet apartment, a promotion at work, mornings that started with peace instead of panic. Some nights I'd sit on the balcony with coffee, watching the city glow. and think about how strange freedom can feel after years of walking on eggshells. I never got an apology, but I didn't need one. My closure came from something far simpler, knowing that I'd survived her, that I'd walked away before her chaos became mine. I didn't burn her world down, didn't scream, didn't seek revenge. I just walked away, and that silence had done more damage than anger ever could. Word eventually reached me that she'd filed for bankruptcy. The same people who once pitied her now avoided her. One of her old friends messaged me privately. She says she wishes she'd been honest from the start. I didn't reply. Some lessons aren't meant to be shared, they're meant to be lived through. One weekend, I donated to a debt relief charity in her name. It wasn't spite. It was closure, a symbolic way to turn her destruction into something good. As I clicked submit, I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I was finally free of the need to win it all. Looking back, I realized that love without honesty is just another kind of debt, one that grows quietly until it takes everything. I paid mine in full, and I'll never owe that kind of pain again. If she ever wonders why I never came back, I hope she remembers the silence, because in the end, I didn't need to ruin her life. All I had to do was leave and let the truth do what it always does.